Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Shots and Tanier NFL podcast for July 18th, 2024 from FTN Fantasy. We are previewing the AFC North today. I am Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy and the editor-in-chief of the FTN Football Almanac 2024. I've been doing a lot of press about the book. It's nice to be back on my own podcast. Mike Tanier is here as always, and make sure you are subscribed to the Mike Tanier Substack at miketanier.substack.com and get all of his coming walkthrough columns as well as more of those top 5 quarterback lists that are a lot of fun. We are joined today by Cale Clinton, who wrote 3 of the 4 AFC North chapters in this year's book, and we're going to talk about the AFC North this week. But first of all, I want to remind you that our show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to play fantasy sports and the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. Underdog is now offering a new customer FTN special with up to $250 on your first time deposit. Best ball season is officially underway. And the easiest place to play is at Underdog Fantasy. Make your choice from slow or fast drafts, starting with the $3 puppy all the way up to the $1,000 entry Mastiff. You can also challenge your friends in battles as small as 2 people up to the usual 12. The Underdog app is easy to use, and new best ball drafts are dropping each week. The NFL season is now less than 2 months away, so now is the time to start drafting to prepare for your home leagues. Sign up with promo code FTN to get a 50% deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Visit underdogfantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And again, don't forget promo code FTN. All right, talking about the AFC North, we're going to go in alphabetical order, which also happens to be the order of the teams that we've projected as far as average wins. And this may be the best division in the game. I think the question of whether this is the best division in the game comes down to Pittsburgh versus Arizona.
Oh, come on.
Who's your favorite 4th team?
Oh, come on. We're not taking the Steelers all the way down to Cardinals territory. We'll talk about it.
I think this is the best division in the game, yes. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Now, it's interesting because shows I've done, people have been a little surprised that we have the Ravens so high because of the amount of talent that they've lost in the offseason. The thing is, they were so high in the regular season last year that even if you take them down for the talent that they've lost, they still end up as the number 1 team in the AFC by little bit over Kansas City. I will tell you what I'm worried about with the Ravens of all the talent they lost. The offensive line and Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator. I'm not that worried about the losses of the players on defense because they have always done a good job of replacing internally when they lose players on defense.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. The Ravens have just done a very good job in the past few years being able to kind of slot in next guy up. Like, few injuries in the secondary, you get a breakout season from Geno Stone. You now see him walk away, but you have enough in the background to kind of supplement him. You have oh my God, name escaping me now.
You have Marcus Williams and you have Kyle Hamilton.
I was more referring to the linebacker who went to
Patrick Queen left and is replaced now by Trenton Simpson, was a 3rd-round pick last year.
Yeah. Who's also one of our top rising prospects potentially for the upcoming season, which just shows how just deep this Ravens roster is. I do agree with you, though, that for me, the biggest change is in the hire of defensive coordinator Zach Orr, or the promotion to defensive coordinator from Zach Orr. Because that McDonald's scheme is tough to learn. If you saw early on, this is now going back to the year prior. That early Miami game where McDonald was just starting out, it's a tough sell. And having Orr come in with a defense that is ready to implement this scheme and is already familiar with it is going to start things off very well. But this is a tough scheme with a lot of moving pieces. Anyone can simulate into the pressure packages set up under this system. It is very touch and go, and you see just how varied the skill set you have to play in this defense. We've got Justin Madubuike dropping back into pass coverage as a defensive tackle. Like, you're not seeing this anywhere else. You have Kyle Hamilton lining up pretty much anywhere on the field. Linebackers are given just an immense amount of responsibility. And it helps so much to have a guy like Roquan Smith in there, especially helping out newcomers alongside him. But having a coordinator as strong as Mike Macdonald leading the best defense, one of the best defenses in Baltimore history, mind you, like just in terms of the DVOA era, it is a big hole to replace.
Apologize, by the way, if you people heard the sound of an ad. That was me having the Ravens depth chart open on my computer, and an ad ran.
On our lids?
Yeah, on our lands.
Yeah, that's what we all use. And I could keep it handy, especially for the offensive line, where I beg your pardon, but who is Roger Rosengarten?
Yes.
And why is he starting on a Super Bowl favorite?
Right, that is a problem, that they have a rookie right tackle and questions at the guard positions and question at left tackle, where Ronnie Stanley is not Ronnie Stanley anymore. So yeah, I fully agree. In fact, I think I even said to somebody yesterday, if there's any element of a team that our projection system has a hard time getting a handle on, it's offensive line. I don't have 15 years of PFF grades. I don't have 15 years of ESPN pass block win rates. There haven't been 15 years of ESPN pass block win rates. So you can't build a model with a stat that only exists for 3 years.
Right.
And the fact is, if you build your model with adjusted line yards and adjusted sack rate, you're not accounting for changes in the offensive line. So offensive line is something that we don't necessarily have the best handle on. And it is, I think, the weakness of the Baltimore Ravens for this year.
Even still, that does feel like another... I completely recognize this is a problem, and we can talk about the offense at large in a little bit, because I have maybe just some lingering questions there. But offensive line in particular just feels very akin to the defense, where it is next man up. I think the best example of that comes in projected starting guard Andrew Voorhees, who was projected to be a second, third round pick in the 2023 draft, blows his knee out in the combine and essentially gets a redshirt year. Baltimore picks him up in the 7th. They just it is getting that full rotation of 3 high quality starting veteran offensive linemen out of the picture is a massive loss and tough to replace. But on a team like Baltimore that pretty consistently sees a lot of churn roster-wise, it's going to be a learning curve, similarly with the younger pieces on the defense, but I've got some faith that it's going to be closer to average than bad. Just in my opinion, just because they've done a decent job in terms of developing linemen, and Lamar Jackson as a pocket presence, takes hits, but has some escapability there where I'm not totally concerned. And also Derrick Henry's run behind much worse lines than what Baltimore is currently trotting out there.
Yeah, that's also true.
I'm glad we mentioned Derrick Henry, because it's not good to go this long without mentioning him. It's bad for SEO. My concern is the level of our projection here. We got Baltimore at 80.4% to make the playoffs. That converts to a minus 410 money line. House is at minus 260. We have the Ravens reaching the Super Bowl. Our number is 21.4%. That's plus 365 money line. The house is at plus 550.
It's because our numbers they were so good last year. They were just
there, yeah,
destroying other good teams like San Francisco and Miami and just walloping them.
Yeah. So that's the thing. If we're arguing for 10.2 wins, or like, oh yeah, 10.2 wins, I can see it. We're arguing for 11.2 wins in our system, which is conservative, and that's tricky. It's hard to see with what I see on that roster.
Well, let me ask you: do either of you think that, contrary to our numbers, Cincinnati or Cleveland should be the favorite in this division?
What do you think, Cale?
Cincinnati, I think, is getting slept on a little bit because of the solid defensive additions to the secondary. Losing Jesse Bates and Von Bell in one foul swoop last year was a real tough loss to that secondary. And just when you lose Joe Burrow, you're kind of punting on a season. So I think people are a little unnecessarily down on
Although Browning was surprisingly good. So the amount that Cincinnati has to improve by going from Browning to Burrow is not that much. I think your expectations for this year would be that Burrow is much better than Browning. And of course, you'd rather have Burrow. But it's not like the Chargers, where the offense completely collapsed with Easton Stick. And they're bringing in Herbert, and he's not Easton Stick. Like, Browning actually was kind of good last year.
Yeah. I mean, with that receiving core that you are bringing back in this case, for the most part.
Well, no Tyler Boyd.
Yeah.
No Tyler Boyd, but
the outside guys come back.
Not securing, but making sure that T. Higgins doesn't completely walk. I'm glad they got something locked in there. Losing Mixon arguably hurts more there. But in talking about Baltimore, I think it's just going to be more competitive. And I don't know, maybe one of you can speak to this. Grabbing Derrick Henry, incredible ad. Having him alongside Keaton Mitchell when he comes back healthy is a thunder and lightning that I can't remember a comparison to. Like, that is, for as much praise as we give Devin Achane as this hyper explosive rookie back, the small flashes we saw from Keaton Mitchell were just as high up there. Yeah. That was really some special play. My issue, though, is we're talking about a team with this high projection, and we're getting sophomore Zay Flowers as wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
And a Rashad Bateman that has had some developmental issues because of injury. And I was a huge Rashad Bateman guy, and I still hold out hope for him, but he just hasn't been the first round receiver we've thought he'd pan out to be. And Nelson Aguilar is our third guy.
He's reaching the Devontae Parker level of it's July and we're talking about Rashad Bateman, and we will not be talking about him in October.
If we didn't have a massive breakout out of Isaiah Likely, and a breakout strong enough for hopefully Todd Monken to reconsider how often he's using 12 personnel, I think this would be a little bit tougher of a justification to push Baltimore this high into contender status. Listen, Lamar Jackson is like a one-of-one quarterback, one of the top 3 to 5 best quarterbacks in this league, depending on where you slot him, and having Derrick Henry as a seemingly regression-proof running back to a certain extent added into this run game is a threat that few other NFL teams can put out there. But again, maybe I'm just repressing last year's Kansas City Chiefs receiver free run challenge mode, but this just doesn't seem like a receiving core conducive to a Super Bowl run. I love Zay Flowers. Him as the star option is a little much for me at the moment.
The whole AFC is trying the same challenge, though. The Buffalo Bills receivers are not good in any way. The Chiefs are hoping these guys can drive 55, and they're probably looking at some problems there. But then you do have the Bengals. We talk about not being able to project Bengals offensive lines. Bengals have a really strong offensive line on paper. Browns have had a strong offensive line on the field for many, many years. And those teams look a little undervalued. I say undervalued, and let me just pull this up right now. Our projection for the Browns is even money to make the playoffs. And the house is at plus 150. Our projection to play for the Bengals is at minus 150. The house is at minus 260. It's the Browns that I look at and say, top to bottom, this team does look like the strongest roster, even if you're putting in a Deshaun Watson who is somewhere closer to the guy we saw last year than the one we saw in 2019.
It really comes down to Watson. It's that was the biggest headache of any chapter I wrote, just trying to decipher what he's going to be, because you have games where he completely crashes out and is just a net negative. He's putting up some of the lowest single game DVOA performances of the Browns season. And he's also single-handedly leading second half Ravens comebacks. There are certain instances where he's not 100% 2019 Watson, 2018 Watson, but he's like 80% there. And you add Jerry Jeudy into this mix, who in a hard wide receiver 2 role, I like more.
Indeed.
And you've just got some interesting pieces in there. I like Deontay Foreman is like a high floor supplementary back to take a little bit of a workload off of Nick Chubb. Offensive line stays, as good of an offensive line as the Browns are capable of putting out. And this defense just, again, was right there with Baltimore all of last year. Was on one of the most historic paces. One of the first pieces that I had run for the 2023 season was talking about just how unprecedented this Jim Schwartz defense was early. Like the multiplicity that they were able to offer, the fact that one of the most intimidating images of 2023 was watching Myles Garrett line up at inside linebacker, do an air dribble crossover, creeping in on the quarterback and getting in the pocket within 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You add that on top of the just depth of this front seven. I know you lose some pretty solid pieces in the middle linebacker, but with a guy like JOK and the supplementary pieces you can add to that through Jordan Hicks reuniting with Schwartz, Devin Bush is a bit of a reclamation project. This is just as formidable of a defense.
Yeah.
And you get another year in the system.
And you can go heavy nickel and dime all the time because you got a lot of depth in your secondary and you don't worry as much about your line.
I will people can make comments and ask questions if you're watching us live. Eric A says the Browns defense was not as good on the road. Yeah. I will point out home road splits like that very rarely carry over from year to year.
Right.
They're basically random variation. And in general, every defense is better at home in general because every offense is better at home in general because it's home field advantage. But most specific teams are not better at home than the road for 2 or 3 years. It's not really a thing.
Right. It looks like they got the Rams on the road, and you get the Rams when everybody's healthy and they're really good. And I see this road game against the Colts, and I don't even know what that was. But it can be 1 or 2 opponents on the road where you were injured or they were healthy or you caught them at their good time or they were a good offense. So I don't know. I don't recall that Colts game. It looks
Mike. I watched that game 3-4 times and I still couldn't tell you what Gardner Minshew did in that game. That was just.
You took the Gardner gummies. You're like, what am I watching? Oh my God! Yeah, it's amazing with him, and that's probably what happened to the defense.
And yet
my hair goes down to my shoulders.
They won that game.
Yeah.
They won 39-38 with PJ Walker starting. Actually, no, Deshaun started, right?
Deshaun started. Walker came in after and helped drive a comeback, and then just chaos ensued late in that game. And Gardner leads what I can only describe as a bizarre game-winning drive against what was at the time the best defense in the league. Just a collapse on behalf of Cleveland. In talking to Browns reporters on work for the chapter, it was multiple people I had talked to were just yeah, I really can't explain that one. And they immediately answered 2 weeks later by putting a minus 108% single game defensive DVOA. They get back home and they get right, and then they beat up Baltimore the next week. But again, just pretty inexplicable.
Oh my God.
I will point out that the projections I've talked about, 8 of the top 12 teams in the league by DVOA projection are in the AFC.
Yeah.
And the AFC North has 3 of those teams.
Right.
But even if we're right about every team, one of them has to miss, not one of the AFC North teams, but one of those 8 has to miss the playoffs.
Right. By definition.
Yeah, it's for those curious, it's the 3 AFC North teams, the 3 AFC East teams, Kansas City and Houston.
And if you're prognosticating, the AFC East has a tougher schedule overall.
Yes.
Not just because they play each other, but I forget what their other divisions
NFC
are.
West. They play the NFC West.
Right. So everybody gets the Niners. Everybody gets the Rams. Everybody gets the Seahawks, who are a very solid opponent. So if you're looking at that skews the over-unders for win totals and playoff odds, because one of those teams is the most likely one to be an odd man out based on we got hit by too many tough opponents.
So Pittsburgh, yes, better than Arizona as far as which is the best division in the game. This may be the season that tries Tomlin's winning record, though. This may be the season where they don't make it to 9 wins. I know it feels kind of like Tomlin can do anything, cannot get any team to 9 wins. But it's not just the quarterback situation, but the wide receiver situation is bad. It's like Pickens and then Van Jefferson.
Van Jefferson, the receiver you sign when you don't know what receiver you really want to sign.
Working on this chapter, I didn't realize just how many friends Arthur Smith brought along to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he brought his guy.
It is Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, throwing Jonnu Smith in that mix, or Michael Pruitt in that mix is a little on the nose.
Corduroy,
like a blocking tight end.
Cordell Patterson, yes.
He brought his teddy bear, Corduroy Patterson.
Patterson went next. I at least like, even at his age, the sheer gadget potential of Cordell Patterson, especially in the new kickoff system, which I'm very excited to see unfold. But this, like you said, Aaron, feels a lot like several immovable object, unstoppable force moments for Pittsburgh. You've got the Mike Tomlin winning streak or winning records consecutively.
The not losing record streak, because as Hitchhiker's points out in the comments, it does have some 8-8 seasons in there. But basically, we know what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Versus whatever's going to happen with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. That is about as make or break as you can kind of have. Like, that will define your season, however that goes. And also just the ability for Pittsburgh to seemingly invent new 1,000-yard receivers and just like consistent late round gems. I don't know. Like, I like Roman Wilson.
Yeah.
Enough. I don't think he's revolutionary, but like making George Pickens wide receiver 1, adding Van Jefferson in place of Deontay Johnson is not great. I will say it helps out the defense a little bit more, bringing him in for Dante Jackson. But like that defense is still going to be solid. They're trying to kind of middle a rebuild while making the tail end of Cameron Hayward's career and like the latter half of TJ Watt's career competitive.
Yeah,
I guess
they've been middling that for 3 years now, and the results have been middling.
Yeah. But even like the long-term investment in Patrick Queen feels a little bit more like, here's a guy who is young enough to basically be a second draft reclamation project that we can have as a potentially long-term fixture alongside a young prospect like Alex Highsmith, who, by the way, is not that young anymore.
Right.
Like, is pretty developed at this point.
27.
But you're also buying Queen on a high, so it's a tough buy-in there.
And Peyton Wilson, the 43-year-old rookie linebacker that they brought in,
who may or may not have knee cartilage.
Yeah.
Matthew Carley does say the Steelers' offensive line might be pretty damn good this year, although that is expecting a lot from a first-year left tackle and a second-year right tackle, I think.
Yeah, a lot of new faces in there. I don't know if Frazier's going to be the rookie center, if Herbig's going to be there. I like what they invested in there, but that looks at me like the offensive line that could be good in 2 years.
Yeah.
What that looks like to me. This is the most fun team to watch in the preseason by far of all of these teams, because you're going to see Fields running around. You're going to see these rookie linemen out there. I don't think Arthur Smith is going to show us any of his wackadoodle schemes, but you're going to see all your friends from the Falcons, like Scotty Miller, will be out there. It's just a matter of what does this entertainment value convert to when the regular season begins, and that's hard to estimate.
And I'd love to see a little bit more of a Calvin Austin in the mix. Like, there are some interesting pieces in terms of developmental work that, like, if they can hit, it's awesome. Jalen Warren's coming off an incredible year, and I'd like to kind of potentially see if he can usurp Najee Harris as the 1A in that backfield, just because, like, a little bit more efficient in the run game, a little bit more productive as a pass catching back last year. Najee Harris is clearly pretty frustrated in that situation from last year.
It's Arthur Smith. It's not going to make any sense. He had Bijan last year.
And yet in Tennessee, it worked.
It did work. He just fed the monster. You're right. I'd love to see like a logical committee there where Warren is 1A and maybe Najee's more of a 2A. I have no faith in that coordinator.
But that's also like the fun thing about Atlanta was like, listen, Kyle Pitts isn't going to get any work, but Jonnu Smith's going to break off a 60-yarder for no reason. Like, Arthur Smith doesn't know what to do with the shiny new toys that he has, but he's got that old raggedy stuffed animal that he's worn to the teeth and like to the absolute threads. And he's still having a lot of fun with it. Like, if we're talking, from a fantasy perspective, Pittsburgh's going to be an absolute crapshoot. But as like a Sunday ticket fourth box team, they're going to be a fun watch. Like, they'll be a fun red zone team pretty inexplicably. I would not put any monetary value or like fantasy.
You can probably think that Wilson will do some things. Wilson will do some things that are very exciting, and then some things that are very exciting for the other team. And if Fields becomes the quarterback, there'll be even more things that are exciting and more things that are exciting for the other team. Like the amount of interesting, exciting plays, not necessarily going in the Steelers' direction, will be high.
You've already got Pickens circus catches and Pickens sideline blowups. This should be the in-season Hard Knocks team. Yeah. Like if we were talking Hard Knocks earlier, this is like getting a little bit of insight into what's going on here might be pretty fun.
Yeah, we'll never get it. We'll never get
it. I feel pretty good wrapping up the AFC North. I feel pretty good about the idea that 3 of the 4 teams will make the playoffs because their schedule is a lot easier than the AFC East schedules.
Right. And you've got the situation where only the division winners likely to make it in the West. We'll look at the South soon enough.
South is next week. We're looking at the South next week, and there's some interesting possibilities in the South, but yeah.
But just to clean things up in terms of the implied odds, we think the Steelers should be plus 325 to make the playoffs. House is way down at plus 185. So that's new.
I think some of that's some Tomlin Street coming into play, but
reputation.
I mean, the quarterback situation is just in a lot of these cases, like even with Baltimore, like Lamar Jackson just hasn't had the potential to stay healthy. Cleveland's make or break on Watson. Whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, whatever version we're getting of them, like I know this is a 53-man sport that usually comes down in terms of discussion to one player. Right. But in this division especially, it is really make or break on quarterback because so many of the other pieces are all in place.
Although I will say, Cleveland's defense is good enough that I don't think it's make or break on the quarterback. I think it's make really amazingly good. If Watson can somehow find the old Watson, that team is a Super Bowl contender. I just don't think it's going to happen.
If he can be game managery, scrambly Watson, that team is a playoff team. But if he's if he's this random misfire generator that then like turns into Ken Stabler in the fourth quarter once in a while, that's a problem.
I mean, this is a team that had a Joe Flacco renaissance with him at the helm, and with like really not a lot of weapons in play. You get
now has Jameis Winston as the backup.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Right. Wouldn't that be fun? Jameis Winston renaissance taking Cleveland to the playoffs.
Right.
Imagine.
One of the biggest mistakes Cleveland made was letting Jacoby Brissett walk. Like that was what a great situation that was.
Right.
Having just some stability back there.
Right. Hard to pay the other guys though. It's hard to pay the other guys when you're paying. JOK is angling for a contract right now, and they can't see eye to eye. Translation: we don't have the cap space or funds to give you like even a big linebacker contract right now.
But Bill Houston says it's interesting the Browns did not sign a hedge for Watson. I think they did. I think that's Jameis Winston.
That's a hedge.
I mean, that's one of the best backup quarterbacks, and that's one of the best veteran backups in the league. That they went out and got a really good veteran backup as far as veteran backups go.
Yes,
and even Huntley as a replaceable, like he'll be in the QB3 mix, obviously, probably fighting with DTR for that emergency quarterback slot. But Baltimore Ravens made the playoffs with Tyler Huntley at the helm. Like he's been a serviceable backup, serviceable. But like a backup for the Ravens, I could see him potentially slotting in if Cleveland has as disastrous a kind of quarterback landslide of injuries that they had last year.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't feel like this team is going in any kind of quarterback hole that resembles last year's Jets.
No.
Where the great defense plays great.
The line's too good.
Yeah, where the great defense plays great and the offense just sucks it all away. I don't think they're going to that place.
No, the line's going to mean they can run the ball a little bit and throw a few short passes here and there, be functional. The Jets didn't have that.
Yeah.
All right, that does it for this week, folks. AFC North, a reminder for everybody who is watching and listening. I hope you've got your copy of the FTN Football Almanac 2024. The print version is available at Amazon, and the PDF version is available at ftnfantasy.com/almanac. And make sure that you are reading Mike at miketanier.substack.com, and Cale will have more content on the FTN DVOA page later today. Next week, we're going to do the AFC South. We'll see if we can rope Rivers McCown to come on the show. If Houston has power.
Oh, God, that's right. Is he without power right now?
He's been without power for like a week and a half. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
Paradise.
Come on, Houston, get your act together. Yeah, I'm laughing at this. It's not really funny.
No.
So, yeah, thank you for watching the Shots at Tanier NFL podcast. And we will be back next week, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday. So long, everybody.